Hello. In this video, we're going to cover rules, the automation layer in Kibana that keeps an eye on your data and nudges the right people when something matters. Think, for example, when a Revit file exceeds 1 GB in size. Kibana fires off a message to your BIM lead before anyone starts wondering why Revit got so slow. Bimbeats ships with a library of ready-made rules. We'll walk through how to switch them on, wire them to email or Teams, change their logic, and build a new one from scratch. To get started, navigate into Management and Rules. Here you will see all the rules that come preloaded with Bimbeats. We have rules for when someone deletes a room from a schedule, deletes a grid, creates a new file, delete levels, etc. Whenever one of these actions is triggered, it will send a message to a selected person. By default, these are disabled, and we haven't told the rule where to send the message. So let's look at this delete levels rule. We can click on Edit. Here we can see the rule definition. In this case, a DSL query from Discover was exported as a JSON and pasted into this query DSL box. We can quickly take a look at what it's doing here. For example, this rule is saying that within the Revit log index, if a document matches action name delete and element selected categories is level, then it'll be triggered. Following, we can see that when the count of all the documents is above 0, as in this happens at least once within 1 minute, the rule will be triggered. If we scroll down, we can see the action is performing. Currently, it's set to send an email to this placeholder email with a subject line levels deleted and a body message containing a message, a file path, the level that was deleted, and the user that performed that action. All we need to do in this case is to replace a placeholder email with your own. And that's all it takes. We can save the rule. And at this point, we still haven't enabled it. But all I need to do now is click on Rule is Disabled, set it to Enabled, and this rule is going to run every minute. Now let me go into Revit and perform the ill-fated action. I'll select Level, press Delete, and we'll go back into Kibana. Because this rule runs every 1 minute, it might take a while to come through. We can click on Refresh and see that the rule has been activated. If I go over to my email, I received a message saying levels were deleted in this file, the architectural sample project. This is the name of the level that was deleted, and this is the user that did it. Let's take a look at the data in Discover. I can see within the Revit log index, I'll filter for action.name is delete. And I can see the action that I just took. Action name is delete, as well as element selected categories is levels. Let's set a filter to reflect that. This is essentially the query that defined the rule. Now let's create a custom rule. Let's say you want to create one that informs you when a model crosses a certain threshold for how many detail groups there are in the model. A good place to start is in Discover. For example, we know that when action name is one of saved, open, and sync, Bimbeats collects a lot of metrics related to model health every time someone saves, opens, and syncs. You can parse through them by expanding the document and clicking through to see what values are collected here. We can see instances detail groups here. Let's pin this so we can see it at the top of every document we look at from now on. If I go back to Revit and I copy over my detail groups and save, if I go back to Discover, I have a new action name saved instance. And if I open the document, I can see that there are now 74 detail groups in this model. Now let's create a filter for instances detail groups. Instances.detail groups is greater than 100. As you can see, there are no documents within the last 15 minutes that have more than 100 detail groups. But what happens if I go into Revit and say I create an array? And I want to have 100 of these. I've now created 100 more of these items. And if I click Save and go back to Discover and refresh, I'll see that now we have an instance where the action name is saved and the number of detail groups are 173. So now this is triggered. We now have the ingredients we need to create a rule. We simply go into Inspect, click in Request, and copy paste the fields that are under Query. We can then go into Management, Rules, create a rule. We're going to select Elasticsearch Query. For rule definition, we'll choose Query DSL, select our index, Rivet event in this case, select our time field, and paste our query in here. Now by default, it included a time range. We want to get rid of that. Make sure I'm grabbing 3 open brackets, 3 closed brackets. And if I test this query, I can see that I have 1 match in the last 5 minutes. Let's take a look at when the count of all the documents is above 0. We want it to run it even if it happens once. When the last, let's do 1 minute, because we're going to run this on 1 minute intervals, then the query will run. So currently it matched 0 documents within the last minute. But if I go back into Revit and I save it and I test the query, we'll see that it now matches 1 document. For rule schedule, we're setting this rule to run every 1 minute. And as you can see, there's currently no action. We can add an action and connect it to email and send it to myself. The subject line will be model cost threshold for detail group count. The message is auto-populated, but we can write our own. So we can say the model has exceeded 100 detail groups. And to include some context, we can go into the add variables here. We're going to look for context hits. Give this a pound so that we can start it. And we can simply type in file is underscore source file.path. And we can close our context hits. Now that we've created the action, we can write create rule. We can see that it's set to enabled. And if I refresh, you can see it is not run. But if I go back into Revit, I will save once more. We'll wait 1 minute and see that it ran. I can open my email and say it says the model has exceeded 100 detail groups. The file is this one. Now let's go back into the rule and edit it to create a connection with Microsoft Teams. All we need to do is add action, choose the connector we created for Teams. You can see how we did this in our video titled How to Set Up a Teams Connector. And similarly, I can paste the message that I wrote into Teams. I can also add some formatting. So let's bold the text here. Save the rule. And again, I'll go into Revit and perform the action. We'll wait 1 minute. And we can see that the rule has been activated. Now, if I go to my Microsoft Teams, I can see that it's pushed a message into my Teams channel saying the model has exceeded 100 detail groups and the name of the file. Finally, I want to show you an easier way to define the rule. If using DSL and JSON syntax is a little bit daunting, we can actually delete the rule definition. We'll click on KQL or Lucene, and this is essentially the same format that you'll see in Discover. We'll click on the data view, select Revit event, and we'll add our filters in the same way that we would in Discover. We'll create a filter for action name is one of open sync or saved. Add the filter, as well as instances dot detail groups is greater than 100. We'll have it run when that is over 1. for the last minute. And if I test the query, I can see that it's matched 0 documents. But again, if I go over to Revit, save my file, test the query, I can see that it's run once. Rule schedule runs every 1 minute, and I have the same actions I had before. I can save the rule. And just like before, if someone goes over the desired count of detail groups in Revit, it'll push a message straight to your email or Teams. Once you've built a custom rule that saves you a manual check, you'll start to see every repetitive audit as a low-hanging fruit. That's the shift. From hunting problems to letting Kibana surface them for you. Bimbeats collects the data you need to keep your teams running smoothly. If you have any questions, please contact us in our forum. Have a good one.